Alright, today I'm gonna just go through and make a bunch of mugs. I have basically one style of mug, and when I throw them, I like to throw a bunch at the same time and throw them to a gauge, so that they're all the same height and width. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Let me get my gauge here. So my gauge is just, I guess it's like a laboratory stand for doing chemistry, and it just has this bracket here, and it holds like a giant chopstick, and I've got an O-ring here so that when I set the height, I can swing it back and forth and it'll stay at the same spot. So what I'll do is I'll throw a mug if I'm happy with it. If I like the way it looks, then I'll set the gauge to it and throw the rest of them. Alright, so let's get started. These are all 1 pound. Usually around 14 to 16 ounces for a 1 pounder. If I get it really thin and tall, then sometimes it'll hold 20, but I shoot for 16 ounces. Alright, so centering for 1 pound, I find it actually a little bit harder than centering like 3 or 5 pounds, just because my hands are big, so it's hard to compress well from both sides. But I push down on this against the bat, and then I do most of the centering with my right hand. I kind of push the clay into my steady hand. I'm just cone up. And when I cone up, I want to bring the clay up to where I think the height of the mug should end. So for these, I try to get them about 4.5 inches high, because I have a bunch of 5-inch kiln posts, and if I do it that way, I can get 3 full shelves in my kiln of mugs, and that's about 35-40 mugs. So bring it up. And I wedged these balls like last week, so they're a little bit, they're going to be a little bit finicky. But hopefully I'll be able to make some nice mugs with this. Okay, centered, so now I'm going to open. And when I'm opening, I'll kind of push off center with this thumb, and then I'll bring my other thumb down in with it. And since I don't like trimming mugs so much, just because I find it's a waste of time, a lot of people don't look at the bottom of their mugs. And if they do, I'll use a wiggle wire, and it leaves a nice pattern on the bottom. I don't think I have any examples in here right now, but and if I don't have time to cut them off, I will just wait for the bat to suck some moisture out of it, and then they'll just pop off with a flat bottom. But either way, it still makes a nice mug. It just doesn't have that museum quality bottom on it. So after I open and I get the bottom as thin as I want it, I will compress from the outside wall down into the middle. It's not super important on a mug to compress the bottom really well, not like it is on, say, like a vase or a bowl. pretty rarely you'll get a crack in the bottom of a mug just because of all of the, I mean, it's just small. It doesn't have a lot of tension going on. So now that I've got the bottom all right where I want it, I don't know, I never measure the width of my mugs at this point. It just kind of happens naturally. And I think you'll find that when you're making mugs over and over again, that your hands will just remember what size the outside, or how far to open it. Once I get it to here though, I'll do like a pull where I use my thumbs on the inside and I'll pull up like this. That gets a lot of the clay off the bottom really quick and up into the walls. And then, let's say for my holes, I just use my fingertips on mugs. They're so small, there's no reason to use a lot of force or anything. So I'll push down at the bat here and get like a little bit of a indentation down there, and that's where this hand is going to ride. And then my inside hand is just going to pull that lump basically and pull it all the way up into the wall. So you'll kind of see it. I'll push out with my inner hand and you'll kind of see that lump just kind of go up into the wall. And I always collar the top end because my rims aren't super wide to start with, but I like to keep the rim at the top kind of closed in, because it's once you've got your form, it's a lot harder to make the rim smaller, but it's really easy to make it wider. So I'll do one more pull. It's pretty thin already. I'll do one more pull up here, even things out, compress the rim, try to get it in a little bit. Whenever I collar at the top, I always put my thumbs down on the rim too to kind of compress that down. It'll help with strength, and if you do a lot of bellying out or forming or whatever, it's gonna help with that too, so that your pot doesn't get too wobbly. So when it's at this stage, I'll go ahead. It's already as tall as I want it, and all the clay's in the sides and off the bottom. So what I'll do is I'll just this is like a triangle shaped trim tool that's really dirty. Yeah, it's just like a metal point, and I'll use that down here at the bottom. Since I'm not going to be trimming the feet after, this is kind of like trimming the foot now. So there's the foot. Now I use a metal rib to do the shaping, and I like to belly mine out at the bottom. The more liquid that stays in the bottom, the more stable the mug will be when someone is using it. You want all that weight of the mug to be at the bottom if you have a standard style handle on it. And by standard style, I mean the ear shape. I do ear shape on all my pots just because it's the nicest looking handle when it's pulled, and it's also the nicest or easiest to do handle if you extrude your handles. And I do a mixture of both. I do pulled handles and I do extruded handles. It just depends on my free time that day and the stage that the pot's in. Like, I've got these mugs here that are going to be basically trashed because I had some stuff come up last week, and I wasn't able to put handles on any of them before they dried out, and I forgot to put them in the wet box. But yeah, like a bone dry pot or bone dry mug like this, there's no way I'm putting a handle on that because it's just going to crack off. So these will get recycled and made into mugs later. So yeah, I'm just gonna shape it now with the metal rib. Metal rib is really nice for shaping and scraping the slip off at the same time. They flex, so you can flex it to the form that you want, and then with your inside hand push it against that form, and you end up with a really nice shape. And then on mine, I like to put in texture right at the height of the rib here, and all I do is I use this corner here, and I push the slip into it, and the slip kind of bunches up at the top here. And if I do the same from the top and push the slip down to the same line, it makes a little protruding V that's pretty sharp, and glaze will break over it. And some of the glazes that I use, when they break, they dramatically change color. I've got waterfall brown, which is usually not brown. It's usually like a bluish green, but when it breaks over this ridge, it turns like a rust orange, and it's really beautiful. So I really like to have this little bit of sharpness there, this visual texture. It really makes for a nice looking mug. So, kind of when I'm looking at my mugs, I want the rim to protrude just as much as the belly. If you imagine there's a handle here, there's going to be extra room for fingers up top where they're needed, and most of my handles are 3-finger handles. And if you look at a hand when it's grabbing a mug, it's a lot of the force is up here, and so you want that extra room there to grip the mug, and the rest of your knuckles kind of go down. So if you imagine that, my hand will be right there, and with just these 3 fingers, it's going to be perfect with this little recess. I'm going to open the bottom just a little bit more because the rim is a little bit wider. I'll just remove the slip at the same time. I'm going to push out with my sponge here. I got a chunk of slip. Remove that. Alright, and then with your chamois, compress the rim, push it down, make it nice and smooth. That's it. So now you can see this sharp line here, kind of towards the rim. And yeah, glaze will break right over that, and it looks really nice. So there's number 1. I throw on these square bats just because it's so much faster and easier to just remove it, put it up here, and not worry about it. And then just grab another one. I get them wet first. If you don't, they will warp. These little square ones not so much, but if you just get one side wet all the time, it's going to bend up on the dry side and make kind of like a dome shape. So I always get mine wet on the bottom and the top, It also kind of helps seal it down onto the, helps seal the insert down into the square hole. Let's set our gauge. Let me grab this mug. All right. The gauge was actually set for mugs last week. So it's almost already right on. Just the height first, and then bring this down. And so I leave maybe 3 or 4 millimeters of space just so I can remove the mug afterwards without it hitting the gauge. Got a whole sack of balls here. So, centering again, pushing down with my left hand, kind of karate chop like, and pushing in with my right hand and forming it. Since I'm not like slamming my clay balls down, when I first start centering, I like to push down, seal it down to the bat head, or to the bat, or wheel head if you don't use bats. Alright, I've got my son in here watching me now. He's going to learn some ceramics. He's going to learn how to throw some mugs, I guess. Anyway, he promised he'd be quiet. Okay. Anyway, so centering. Centering is a lot easier when you cone up. So, cone up. And I like to bring my cone all the way up to where I want the mug to be. Where the lip of the mug to be, how tall I want it. So, I'll cone up, all the way up to there, all the way up to the gauge. I'll clean up the buttress a little bit. Now, when I cone back down, I'm using like this right here to push down into my left hand. So. Hopefully when you do that, it gets it right in the center. If not, you just need to cone up and down again. This isn't perfectly centered. Now it is. Okay. So opening, start with this thumb off center. You can kind of see here, there's like a little divot in the middle. It makes that, and then you know where to push into the center. So I do that first, and then follow up with my other thumb. And then I go all the way down to where I feel that the bottom of the mug should be without trimming. Sometimes it's hard to gauge that. It just comes with experience. If you want, you can just you can grab a needle tool and you can push it down in the middle and check how thick it is. Mine's about 1/4 inch, so that's about perfect. Maybe a little bit less. Maybe it's like between 1/4 and 1/8. So if you do check with the needle tool, be sure to compress the bottom afterwards. You don't want like a leaky spot in your mug. So now I've got it centered, I've got the bottom compressed from the outside in, and now I will do the pull. I grab with my thumbs like this, and then with these hands I'll pull up. You don't have to go fast. That gets a lot of that bottom stuff off the bottom right away up into the walls, and it makes it a lot easier to do your pulls like this. And so now that I have my gauge, I don't have to guess how high it should be. It should always go up to the gauge. So now I'm pushing in with my right hand, pulling up with the inner hand, right to the gauge. And there it is. Now I use my pointy tool and trim the bottom. Okay, and now it's time to shape. So pushing out with my inner hand into the curved rib. Belly out a bit more. And then there's the slip bunching up at the top there. I'll go here, going down, kind of remove some of the slip, otherwise you'll have like a really huge mountain. Push down right till you get to that spot next to the ridge. And get your sponge. Belly out the bottom to the point where it's at the rib. Just make it look nice. What's that, buddy?
Mama, do the thumbs up.
Thumbs up? Okay, go ahead.
Not right now.
No, how about after the video? You can tell everybody to subscribe and like. How about that? That's your favorite part of YouTube videos. Alright. So that is to the gauge now. Go ahead and clean up the wheel head. And now compressing the rim with your chamois. Boom. There's number 2.
Make your thumbs up.
Alright.
Subscribe, everybody. Subscribe, everybody.
Okay. I thought you said you were going to be quiet.
Give me 1,000 Robux. Then give him 1,000 subscribers.
Wow, 1,000 subscribers. Wow, wouldn't that be something? Alright. Next clay ball.
It's called the bad one.
Okay.
You're gonna make a destroy one?
Switch my ball sack here.
Make us destroy one, Daddy. I make it destroy.
And
Make destroy.
and karate chop down.
Bye
My
bye.
right hand.
Bye bye. I'm gonna go bye bye.
Oh yeah, what are you gonna do? You gonna go ride your bike? Hold on, let me help you get out so you don't knock over the camera again.
Wait, you need to try getting it?
Hold on, let me get this centered first. Calling up to the gauge.
And Daddy got 200,000 minutes.
Okay. And pushing down into my other hand. Get it down here. And centered. Enough. Centered enough.
Dad's going to wash your hands.
This is where I wash my hands.
It might look so dirty.
Because it is. It's very dirty. It's full of clay. But the water's a little bit cleaner than my hands, so it works. Alright, let's go. Alright. Alright, next mug. I'm gonna it centered enough. And I say centered enough because for something like a mug, as long as your hands aren't like wobbling all over the place, it's not gonna be too bad. If you just can't nail it, it's still gonna work. I know some people are like really into centering a lot. It's really a lot more important on something bigger, just because when the walls are uneven or you're pulling up, you don't want like a massive wobble in something that's, you know, a foot high. But for a mug about 4.5 inches tall, you're not gonna get like some crazy wobble unless you really are off center, like really off center when you go to pull. So just opening up here, compress in the middle, and now we'll do our first pull here. Get some of that stuff off the bottom. Go in here, compress the rim. This is all stuff that's, when you're making a bunch of mugs at the same time, it all just is muscle memory. Going down under here, making that little bulge and the indent, and then we'll just ride that bulge all the way to the top. And pull this up to the gauge. There we are. We'll just get our trim tool. It doesn't look super pretty right now, but hopefully that'll change. Alright, get to shaping. Scraping the slip off of this, and pushing out. Making sure your hands are nice and lubricated. Try not to use too much water, just because you're going to have to pull it out of the pot at the end anyway, and just having a soaking wet inside doesn't help a ton. You want the surface of the clay to be slippery. You don't want a puddle in the bottom. That can affect the strength of the finished piece. And you don't want that. You don't want a weak mug. There's nothing worse than having this mug that looks great and then you fire it and a crack forms in the bottom, or you know, there's a crack on the side, or warps. Not fun, especially since you know you got to that point and you think you've got it nailed. You're like, oh, this is a great looking mug, but that moisture is just killing you, because after it's fired it just didn't turn out quite the way you had planned. Alright, I'm going to belly this out a little bit more, kind of get it closer to the rim of shave, kind of clean up this area here. Just sort of refining this little peak here. Okay, there's a little bit of slip on the bottom. Yeah, I'll go ahead and show you how much slip actually is in the bottom. Can't really see it with the angles I've got the cameras at right now, but I will show you. Alright, this camera will be the easiest to move. So, you see that? There's just a little tiny little puddle of slip there. So yeah, that's what I aim for. That's easy to remove. It's not going to cause any problems. That's just how it be. Trying to throw a little bit drier. Just aim for using slip on your hands. I do use water. There's nothing that beats water for a quick bit of lubrication. You don't always have a ton of slip handy. So just bring it out of there. There's not even enough to squeeze out. And then we will lather the rim. Nice and smooth, compress it down. That compressed rim will serve you well. And actually, you know, I'm not super happy with this angle here. So I'll straighten that out. There we go. Just gonna slip off the side. Alright. There's number 3. Alright, time for another one. Alright. Another ball out of here. Try to put it in the center. You don't always need to slam your balls down. It does look cool and sound cool. But if you have a gauge in front of you, it's gonna be hard to slam a ball down without whacking your gauge. So just gonna seal it down, and then cone up. Up to the gauge. There we go. I like to down here. Buttress forms. I mean, there's no way to get around it. When you're pushing in, it's hard to put a ton of pressure down there at the bottom to the point where you're not going to have clay at a slope like that. But once you get it coned up, you can just pull that clay off. And if you don't, what happens is that it'll start sucking clay down into that, just because of the centrifugal force. Okay. Next, mug. Centering, karate chop, pull it into there. Going up. Pulling down. Oof, that one's off. is. It's not quite to the gauge. Need some lubrication. Alright. To the gauge. Oh boy. Sponge, dry it out a bit. Weather the rim. Okay. You gotta hear my wheel knocking around. These scut wheels, they're removable, and I just greased up the axle there, so it's a little bit slick, but it's better than it being stuck, that's for sure. And it doesn't affect when you're throwing. It's just it just makes noise when you stop. Okay, another ball. Seal down. Going it up to the gauge. Going back down. Centered enough. Open it. Press the bottom. Make sure you got some water in there or slip. Important when you're compressing. Alright. just in throwing, in general, don't be afraid to go down. You don't always have to move up. You can always compress down. You can always push clay back down. If you have a wobble in a pot, if you're too tall, if you feel like there's a thin spot, don't be afraid to push down too. You don't always have to move up. You don't always have to have an upward motion when you're shaping or forming or ribbing or anything. It feels wrong almost to push clay back down. I don't know why, but it feels like you should always be bringing clay up, and that's just not the case. Don't be afraid to push clay back down. Alright, this is pretty good. There's just some extra slip there at the ridge that I made. Slip down to the bottom. Alright. So, I got 2 more clay balls. Go ahead and finish those up. I think my next video I'll go through handles, kind of thumb trimming these. They don't get an actual trim, but they still need to have a nice junction there at the bottom. And the way we do that is called thumbing it off. And I don't know, it's a really simple way of trimming mugs, especially. I do it on. I've got these little jars here too, and I thumb these off too. There's no need for a trim to bottom on something like that. Alright, do these last 2. Centered enough. Down in. Press the bottom. Don't go too crazy. It's just a mug. And I'm doing this at a pretty fast wheel speed. I don't suggest doing that. Go a little bit slower. It's a lot easier to control the clay, a lot easier to avoid getting dry spots. It's just slower for me. I'm at the point where I can do a mug pretty fast, so I kind of go with a higher wheel speed. Also, the higher wheel speed, the rim wants to get wider. As long as you're comfortable collaring in and compressing the rim, it's not a huge deal. But definitely, if you're not comfortable with it, definitely slow your wheel down. I slow it down when I'm shaping, just because during shaping, there's a lot of friction between the rib and the clay. And if you're going fast, the clay is going to catch on the rib, and it's not good. It's not fun. That'll wobble your pot pretty much instantly. And if you wobble your pot with a rib, it's a lot harder to get the wobble out than maybe a wobble from an uneven pull or something. So now we'll shape it. You can see I'm going pretty slow. I'm just bending my rib here. Getting the slip off. Making it look nice. Good curves. The rib really helps with that. This metal rib. Oh my gosh. What would I do without it? Form the rim here. A lot of times when I'm forming this rim, I'm pushing the clay down. I keep an eye on the gauge here, and if I need to drop the height down, I will push down. If I need to bring the rim in, I'll push more on this and push down at the same time. That'll bring the rim down into line. This looks like it's about right. Slip out. Belly it out a little bit down there. Make it the same as the rim. Missing finger room there. At least on my form. I'm just showing you my form. There's many ways to make a mug. Why I settled on this form, I have no idea. I just really like it. I like the way that it turned out. I like the way it feels when you're drinking from it and everything. So if your mug is different, no biggie. Alright, last one. Last ball of clay here. sponge. That's a little bit too much belly, maybe. This one will be special, I suppose. And done. All right. Know where to put it. Well, hopefully that's helpful. Thank you for watching. Yeah, my next video, I think I'll do handles. I'll pull some, extrude some, attach them. That should be in a few days, I suppose. I'll show you thumbing off mugs as trimming. And yeah, stay tuned.